I want to circle back to a story that's very personal to me that Taryn reminded me of. We'll talk about this relationship between the senior NCO and the commander. So for those who've watched my show for one, you know me. If you watch my social media, you may know that I lost my first wife, Jennifer, and child in a car accident in 1994, in September 1994, which is coming up. The anniversary's coming up. And it was very tragic. So, but here's the rest of the story that I've never probably told. I don't know if I've ever told it publicly. So the story is, I was actually in a meeting at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, at our hangar when her car accident occurred in Clarksville, Tennessee. And we were in the meeting. We were sitting there getting ready to brief. We had a brand new battalion commander, which you may be familiar now with. That's Lieutenant Colonel. He was our boss. He was actually the incoming guy. And we were having a meeting talking about upcoming training. And this guy was a bit of a dick. We'll just put it that. So it was a very stressful meeting. In the middle of the meeting, he got called out by my boss, my old boss, a guy named Major Bill Gillen, who I'll name check physically because Bill Gillen saved my life. So Major Gillen called out Lieutenant Colonel out in the hallway for something. So we took a break. I went out to get myself a Diet Coke out of the because that's what I do. Need my caffeine. And they said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm going to get a drink." They said, "Well, we need to talk to you." And they brought me into what was then what we call our flight planning room, which is a huge room. It's a small room for the pilots where we have a huge map of the region, the local, our flying areas and all that kind of stuff. And that's where we used to plan our flights. And the whole room was full of people. And the chaplain was there, which is never good. If you're a soldier, you know, when the chaplain's in an unexpected meeting, it's never fucking good news. So they sat me down in a chair and looked me, Bill Gillen squatted down in front of me and he said, "There's been an accident." And I said, "Jennifer?" He says, "Yes, she didn't make it." And I said, "The baby?" He said, "No, baby didn't make it either." And I collapsed. I fell out of my chair. I ended up on the floor and all hell broke loose because this new colonel was there. He started yelling, "Has this been confirmed? What are we doing here?" You know, chaos. I mean, honestly, I just remember chaos. People were talking over me. And the funny part is, I was a company commander at the time. I had what was called a headquarters company. I had 120 soldiers in the 101st Airborne Division. And I had a first sergeant, senior NCO, like Tim Walz. Somehow, I ended up sitting on the floor with my back against the wall as these people, these soldiers, fellow soldiers, argued over my situation. My first sergeant sat down next to me. And he said, "What are you doing?" And I was in shock, as you know. If you ever talk to someone who's in shock, you kind of get woozy. And my first sergeant, who was a big black man, big hulking figure. That was the best part because I could use him because he was so big, much bigger than me. First sergeant stands up and says, "Everybody shut the fuck up. This captain needs help right now. We're leaving." And he physically picked me up by the shoulders and duck marched me out of the room to a car and whizzed me out of there. That's what a senior NCO does. So that day of chaos, when all hell was breaking loose, when I needed help, my first sergeant, my senior NCO, like Tim Walz, was the guy who cut through the fucking bullshit and took care of me as the commander and ensured that my morale, my health and safety was his number one priority. That's the gift we're getting when Tim Walz becomes Vice President of the United States. We're getting someone who has spent 24 years of life understanding soldiers' needs, understand the needs of his boss, the commander-in-chief in this case, and will put their welfare ahead of his own to ensure that they're taken care of. That's the gift of the possibility of having the first guy who ever served as a command sergeant major in the United States Army to be the number 2 guy, the command sergeant major of the country. And I tell you that very, very personal story that actually causes me to choke up when I tell it, because you need to understand the gift of having someone with that experience on our ticket, on the Democratic ticket. So when you see people like J.D. Vance, Donald Trump, the scumbag who had 5 draft deferments and fake bone spurs, who never served a day, has spit on our service, called us suckers and losers, says he doesn't understand why anyone would do it. When you have that as your opponent, you have a vice president nominee who chose to attack a fellow veteran, a vice president nominee who served 1 tour, 1 enlistment, to attack another veteran openly because of his damn politics. The contrast is clear. And I tell you that personal story because I need you to understand the gift that we've been given with the experience of Tim Walz. And all the stories I hear about him, I can picture him being that guy that would have lifted me out of that room in my time of need.